I just received my CELPIP test results and my scores are unbelievable. I got 12 in listening, 10 in reading, 12 in writing and 11 in speaking. Now I didn't expect these scores because I booked my test just 2 weeks in advance and I really didn't have time to study. So in this video I'm going to share with you my best tips and tricks you should know before taking your exam. I'll explain why I chose CELPIP over IELTS and I share the exact speaking and writing templates that I used in my exam. So you can use those as well to get a high score, hopefully a CLB 9 or 10, and much more useful information that you don't want to miss. So without further ado, let's get into it. CELPIP is a general English language proficiency test and it's officially accepted by IRCC for your permanent residency, express entry, and some organizations like the Real Estate Council of British Columbia. Now CELPIP is an alternative to IELTS, and prior to registration I spent a lot of time reading other test takers' opinions and reviews, and finally I decided to take the CELPIP for several reasons. First of all, it will be done in just one sitting and you don't need to book a separate session for your speaking. It also has the word counter and a spell check, which is going to be very useful when you get to the writing section. My second reason was that before moving to Canada, I took the IELTS and I noticed in the listening section they used a strong and heavy British or Australian accent. However, in CELPIP you have the Canadian accent, which is much easier to understand. My next reason is that you'll get your scores just in 5 days, which is pretty quick. It's also good to know there are 2 free practice tests. I highly recommend to Google CELPIP free practice test and click on the first link, which will take you to the CELPIP website, and you'll be able to take 2 free practice tests before registering for your exam. There are 2 types of CELPIP exams, general and general LS. The general test takes almost 3 hours and it evaluates your listening, reading, writing and speaking, and it costs 280 Canadian dollars. This is going to be used for your permanent residency application, express entry program and some other designations. However, the general LS exam takes 1 hour and it only evaluates your listening and speaking. It's for the citizenship applications and it costs 195 Canadian dollars. But in this video I'm going to focus on the general test, which covers 4 sections. So let's talk about the test format. The test is going to start with the listening section, which takes about 55 minutes and it has 6 main tasks. Part 1 is listening to problem solving and it has 8 questions. In this part there are going to be 3 separate audio clips and each one is 1.5 minutes long. So the computer plays the first audio and it asks a few questions, then plays the next audio and asks 2 other questions, and so on. The audio clips are played only once, so pay attention because you won't be able to hear those again. In part 2 you listen to a 2-minute daily life conversation and it has 5 questions. Part 3 is listening for information, which takes 2.5 minutes with 6 questions. Part 4 is listening to a 1.5 minute audio of a news item with 5 written questions. I mentioned written because in parts 1 to 3 you won't see the question. They'll be verbal question, which means you can read them and you can just hear them once. Part 5 is different because it's the only part that you watch a video clip instead of only listening. You're going to watch a 2-minute video clip about a discussion, which is usually a conversation between 3 people and it's usually between 2 men and 1 woman. They are usually co-workers complaining about company's new policy. So here make sure to write down the names and dress colors, because after the video is gone you might see a question that asks what the guy in the blue t-shirt said or what the lady in the black coat thinks. So pay attention to that, and after watching the video it's going to ask 8 written questions. Now a quick tip over here, you have to write down some notes because it's super necessary, and I recommend to draw 3 lines like a pyramid shape and write down their name and dress code under each line real quick and write down whatever they say under their names. Now the final part, which is part 6, is listening to viewpoints. It's going to be a 3 minutes long audio clip with 6 written questions. At the exam they give you a pen and paper so you can take notes. Now you can't write everything. In fact, I realize it's best to learn to use sign signs and symbols instead of words, because it's going to save you so much time. For example, instead of writing the word positive, you can just draw a positive sign, or instead of writing the word circle or square, you can just quickly draw a circle or a square sign. The final tip is to be aware of the fact that as the listening section goes by, it gradually gets more difficult. Usually part 1 is the easiest and part 5 and 6 are the hardest sections. Alright, let's talk about the reading section. It takes about 1 hour and it has 4 main parts. Now, same as the listening, it starts with a practice task, and after that you'll have Part 1. Part 1 is reading a correspondence, which usually needs reading an email on one side. Then answer 6 multiple questions on the right side. Then right next to that, you should complete an email response, which is a reply to an email that you just read with 5 questions. So in total, Part 1 is going to be 11 questions, and you just have 11 minutes to complete that. Part 2 is reading to apply a diagram. Same as the last question, you should answer multiple choice questions and complete an email response with 8 questions, and you have 9 minutes to complete this task. Part 3 is reading for information. There will be a few paragraphs on the left side, and on the right side there are 9 questions that ask you, for example, which paragraph explains this line, and from there you should select paragraph A, C or D. In this task, it's very important to read a paragraph and go through every question on the right side and select the questions that are related to that specific paragraph, because if you read the whole reading and try to answer the questions, you won't be able to remember which paragraph was about which question. So remember to read paragraph A and answer related questions, read the next paragraph and answer the questions, and so on. And remember, you just have 10 minutes for 9 questions in this section. Now part 4, which is the final part, is about reading for viewpoints, and you have 13 minutes to answer 10 questions. You should answer multiple choice questions and complete a reader's comment. For example, the reading talks about a specific thing and it asks you 5 questions. Next, there will be a comment, which is usually a website visitor that says, for example, I just read your article on this topic and you should complete 5 free spaces in his comment. So in total, there will be 10 questions. The third section of your CELPIP exam is going to be writing. Now this section is about 55 minutes and it has 2 tasks. The first task is writing an email. You're going to have 27 minutes to write between 150 to 200 words. The second task is responding to survey question. There will be an issue and someone is going to ask your opinion. Now you should choose between the 2 options and you should justify your choice with 150 to 200 words in 26 minutes. Remember to try not to go over 200 words and don't write less than 150 words, because chances are high that it's going to affect your score. In fact, you can write an extra 10%, like up to 210 words, but anything above that is going to affect your score negatively, so try to keep it between 170 to 180 words. The writing task 1 is about writing an email, so you should always start with a greeting. If they give you a name, you can say Dear David. If you don't have the name, you can write Dear Sir/Madam. Or if it's a formal email and you don't know the name, you can write To whom it may concern. Then you put a comma and 1 space. Then you should introduce yourself and write your main purpose statement. In my exam, I started with my name is Ali. I'm writing this email to express my concern about this, and you explain why you're writing this email. If you should write about your dissatisfaction, you can start with my name is Ali and I'm writing this email to express my dissatisfaction in regards to this, and you write down your purpose statement. You'll see a timer that shows the remaining time, and under the text area in your writing, the number of words will be counted by the system. Usually in this task, they are going to ask you to talk about 3 things, so depending on the question, you need to write 3 short paragraphs. You can always end with something like thanks for consideration and I look forward to hearing from you. Then you can write sincerely, comma, or kind regards, or best regards, comma, and then you have to enter your name in the next line. The second writing is completely different from the first one. because it's a survey question, and surveys are usually anonymous, which means you don't need to start with a greeting and enter your name at the end. So between two options, you should choose one and use this template. Then you should bring two reasons. So you start the next paragraph with the first problem and start writing about the problem or benefit, and use two other sentences in this paragraph. In the next paragraph, you can say the second problem or point or benefit is that, then you'll bring another reason and write two other sentences. And finally, at the end of your writing, you can say, considering these reasons, I believe an elevator or tennis court or pool or hotel or whatever you're talking about would be a better choice. Everyone in the community or in the building or in the gym would be overjoyed. Again, this is my personal opinion, but I'll support whatever decision is made. And your final sentence would be, I appreciate the opportunity to provide input on this issue. Remember, you don't need regards or your name in this task. That's it. I recommend to write at least 10 writings, and a higher score is guaranteed. The final part in your CELPIP exam is speaking. And remember to practice, practice, and practice. Now, the speaking section has 8 tasks with 15 to 20 minutes in total. Now, task 1 and task 7 are the only tasks that you should speak for 90 seconds, which is too long. You have to use a personal experience to tell a story, but hopefully the rest of them are just 60 seconds long. So in task 1, you should give advice to someone. For example, the question is something similar to this. Then you have 30 seconds to prepare and 90 seconds to talk. Remember, you should speak directly to that person and provide 2 to 3 pieces of advice, and I highly recommend telling a story which shouldn't be necessary based on a real life experience. You can always use your imagination and just make one. Alright, task 2 is about a personal experience, and you have 30 seconds to practice and 60 seconds to speak. Now, the reason for this question is to evaluate your ability to use the past tense. So make sure to use past verbs a lot in this test. You can always start with something like, so 3 years ago, or we can say, so last week when I was doing that, and you can always finish with something like anyways and come to your conclusion. Task 3 is about describing a scene. You have 30 seconds to prepare and 60 seconds to talk. You can always start with, this is a picture of a busy food court, or this is a picture of a movie theater hall, and start describing from the main thing or biggest thing down to small things or minor things. So in this task, make sure to use in the background or in the foreground, behind, in front of, besides, next to, under, above, or if something is at the corner, you can say at the top right corner, or at the top left corner, or you can say at the bottom right corner, at the bottom left corner of this picture. You can always finish with something like, alright, I hope I've given you a good description of this picture, or something like, I hope I could give you a good description of this scene. Now, the last tip for task 3 is that you don't need to take notes, because the picture is going to be your note. Task 4 is about making predictions, and you have 30 seconds to prepare and 60 seconds to talk about the same picture that you had in task 3. So in task 3, you had the picture and you had to describe it, and in this task you should guess what's going to happen next. Now, the reason behind this task is to measure your ability to use future tense. So use will or is going to a lot, because that's what exactly examiners are looking for. Make sure to talk about most of the things, not just one thing or one person. Talk about at least 3 or 4 things in that picture. Now, in this task, you can always start with something like, I think several things are going to happen in the next few minutes. And in this task, you can always end with, anyways, those are some of my predictions in this scene or in this picture. In task 5, you're going to compare and persuade. So the next question is going to give you 2 options, and first you have 60 seconds to select one. Next, it's going to give you another option, and you have to persuade a friend or a family member or a coworker why your option is better than his option. So here you have 60 seconds to choose between 2 options, another 60 seconds to prepare to compare, finally 60 seconds to speak and persuade. So hopefully in this task you have a lot of time to get prepared. You can always start with something like, hey, I know you prefer A and I appreciate your opinion, but I think B would be a better option. Then you should bring 2 or 3 reasons, and finally, you can always finish with something like, anyway, that's why I think this would be a better option, and I hope I have convinced you. Now, a quick tip for this task is to do not read from the text. For example, don't say, I understand that your option costs $20 and my option costs $30. Instead of that, you should say, I understand that your option is cheaper. So the examiner here wants you to use a lot of words like cheaper, more expensive, closer, further, easier, harder, weaker, stronger, and so on. Task 6 is about dealing with a difficult situation. You should usually call someone and explain a decision to a friend or family member, and you have 60 seconds to prepare and 60 seconds to speak. Now you can always start with something like, hi, it's Ali calling here. How are you? If it's a sad news, you can say something like, I'm so sorry to hear that. I really wish I could make it, but unfortunately I can't, and explain why you can do something. You can say something like, I'll be happy to help in any way I can in the next few days. I just can't do it today or tomorrow. And you can always finish this task with something like, thanks for understanding my situation. In this task, remember to speak directly to that person. So don't say, I would tell him or I would tell her, and instead of that, speak directly. Task 7 is about expressing opinions. You should explain why you agree or disagree with a statement. And same as task 1, you have 30 seconds to prepare and 90 seconds to speak. So you should always state your opinion first. You can start with, I think A should be B for several reasons. So state your opinion. Next, you should bring 2 or 3 reasons. You can use phrases like first of all, second of all, or finally. Now, since 90 seconds is a long time to talk, I highly recommend talking about a personal experience or a story. But remember, it doesn't have to be a real story, and you can always make one. Finally, task 8 is about describing an unusual situation. So they give you a weird picture, and you should describe a picture of an unusual item or situation to someone over the phone who can see the picture, and you have 30 seconds to prepare and 60 seconds to speak. Now, in this task, you can always start with something like, hi John, it's Ali calling here. I'm just in the Vancouver Mall or Stanley Park or Cactus Club restaurant right now, and I see a really strange thing. Wow, this is really hard to describe, but I'll try my best. Then you start describing like 3 or 4 things in that picture, and finally you can always finish with something like, I hope I could give you a good description of this picture, or I hope I could give you a good description of this scene. So here was a quick overview on the CELPIP exam format. Now, a lot of people think they should purchase extra material from CELPIP website, and I personally think no, that's unnecessary because there are tons of free practice tests on YouTube or Google for free. Right now, you can Google CELPIP writing task 1, for example, and in the first search results, you'll see hundreds of free writings. Now here is a chart of equivalencies between CLB or Canadian Language Benchmark of CELPIP and IELTS. As you can see, in CELPIP, if you get 10 on reading, it's equal to CLB 10. Or if you get 6 in speaking, it's CLB 6. And here is the test score chart of IELTS. Remember, there is no final average test score. Each section, like reading, listening, writing, and speaking, have their own score. And after you get your final scores, if you want to apply for, let's say, the Express in 3, you can go to IRCC's website and use their online tool, enter your scores separately to see how many points you're going to get. Now, on the test date, unfortunately, you should wear a mask all time. Even in the speaking section, you should wear it, which is very stupid, I know. If you speak too loudly, they'll ask you to lower your voice. And remember, you're in a room with 6 or 7 other test takers, so you should expect some noises during the speaking section. If you're taking the test for IRCC purposes, make sure to bring your own passports because they don't accept government IDs. Make sure to arrive at least 30 minutes prior to your test because the checking will be closed 15 minutes before the scheduled time. Now, hopefully, temporarily, you can transfer your exam to another date or time free of charge, which is amazing, but it can be done only 2 business days prior to your exam date. For example, if your exam is on Wednesday, you can transfer it online on their website before Monday at 5 p.m. You need to sign into your account and under the upcoming test, click on Actions and click on Transfer to a different setting. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions, make sure to comment below. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure to watch my other videos as well. As always, thanks for watching and see you in the next video.